Welcome, everyone. We're going to wait about a minute or so to allow everyone to get in. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. My name is Laura with the Plano Public Library, and I want to thank you all for joining us for tonight's program. Please note your microphone and video have been turned off. If you have questions, you can type them into the chat. Jessica will be monitoring the chat to assist you with any issues and bring any questions to my attention at the end of the program. We will also be sure to leave time for these questions. A few housekeeping reminders that I'd like to share with everyone. Please note that this program is being recorded and will be made available on the Plano Public Library YouTube page for later viewing. Soliciting business or selling merchandise during library virtual programs is prohibited. Please show respect for our presenter and one another throughout the program. Zoom provides live captioning. This option is available in the Zoom toolbar. And welcome to Creating a Backyard Bird Paradise. Tonight, we are going to talk about making your yard enticing to your neighborhood birds, the reason why having a bird-friendly yard is good for the environment and for you, as well as resources you can utilize on your journey to your backyard bird paradise. We're going to jump right in with why feed the birds. There are several reasons to feed your backyard feathered friends. For one, it improves your mental health. A 2019 birdwatching study by the American Psychiatric Institution found that 7 out of 10 people experienced a positive change in their mental health after bird feeding for just 1 week. It also builds community. Feeding the birds is an accessible hobby that you can participate in from your own home. Bird watchers are an active community with options to participate in bird research and outings with other birders. And birds are everywhere. So if you want to connect with nature, as Sir David Attenborough says in this quote, birds are a very accessible wild creature. They are everywhere we go. They're something you're going to see in your backyard. You do not have to travel to see them. Another reason to feed the birds is to participate in conservation. A recent study found that the North American bird population is down by 2.9 billion breeding adults. Now, when we think of population loss, we typically think of endangered species out in the wild, like elephants, whales, or bison. And while this decline does affect all species of birds, it is especially noticeable because common birds have suffered the greatest loss. More than 90% of the losses come from just 12 families, which include sparrows, blackbirds, and finches. And these are common backyard feeder visitors. So by feeding birds and creating a backyard bird paradise, you are giving them food, water, and habitat space that gives birds a safe environment to thrive in. And that 2.9 billion birds, that is equivalent to 1 in 4 birds gone since 1970. So what do birds need? There are 4 things that birds need to survive: food, water, shelter, and a place to nest. And each of these are easy to add to your backyard. We're going to go into detail for each element. Let's start with food. So food is crucial to a bird's survival. While this is obvious for all living creatures, there are some species of bird that will not survive a cold night if they don't get the right amount of food during the day. One way to provide food for your birds is to plant it. Native plants are always the best choice. They meet the needs of the wildlife that is already here, and they are suited for our environment and climate. I planted a native pollinator garden last spring, and I have never watered it. These plants thrive in hot, dry Texas summers. I referenced the Ladybird Johnson Wildflower Center database to see if plants I want to plant are native. You can search by a plant's scientific or its common name. And each entry also details who likes to eat the plant, so you can target certain species if you wish. I love it when my cedar waxwings visit over the winter, and they are not feeder visitors. So they are not going to come to a bird feeder. I decided to see what would make them come to my yard and came across the American beautyberry bush, which I have now planted. It's still pretty small, so I don't know if it will entice them anytime soon, but in a few years, they should have some berries to eat. And then there is a way to locate native plant nurseries using the directory on the Native Plant Society of Texas website. So if you maybe don't want to grow something from seeds, you want to go ahead and get a plant that's a few years developed, this database will help you locate nurseries nearby that may have it. Another bonus of planting for the birds is that at the same time, you can encourage pollinators to your yard. Bees and other insects will also provide food for the birds. Once they start having their babies, they may not be as interested in seeds as they are in getting protein for their babies. Now, another way to provide food is to put out feeders. There's a lot to consider here, so let's start by looking at some of the different feeder options. So the ground feeder is the no feeder feeder. Simply scatter food in an accessible area, and while almost all birds will eat from the ground, there are some species like doves, so mourning doves, white-winged doves, that prefer to eat off the ground. I like to scatter seed on my patio so that I can see them. Now, a hopper feeder, which is the one with the cardinal on it, are typically large and they can hold a lot of seed. They have a perching area that can accommodate birds of different sizes. They also have a roof that protects both the seeds and the birds from rain. Two feeders, which have the finches on it, are like hopper feeders. They can hold a lot of seed. They usually have multiple access openings with small perches, which helps discourage large birds like grackles or doves from using the feeder. Next, there is the platform feeder. These are large flat feeders that allow large birds or a flock of birds to feed. It is best to use one with drainage holes or a mesh bottom so that when it rains, water can drain. A suet feeder is a high energy food made from rendered animal fat with nuts, fruits, or seeds mixed in. A mesh cage around the feeder allows birds to perch and take bites from the suet. And then there is the nectar feeder. These are typically set out for hummingbirds, but they can also attract orioles, tanagers, and warblers. And in locations where nectar-eating bats live, they can also attract nocturnal visitors. So now let's look at what we put in our feeders. As with feeders, you will have plenty of options to choose from. I'm going to touch on those foods that I have had success with. So there's so much you can feed your birds, but these are the ones that keep them coming back to my yard. So the black oil sunflower seeds are sometimes referred to as boss. These seeds have thin shells that most birds can crack with their beaks, so they're easy to get into. And they have a very high fat content, so they are an excellent choice for winter feeding, as well as at the start of migration. If you have birds that might be spending summer or winter elsewhere, they're going to need that energy to get there. I use these in several of my feeders all year long. Safflower seeds, these are thick-shelled seeds and they are a favorite among cardinals. And then there's Niger. Now, this is a favorite food of finches and buntings. So the indigo bunting and the other buntings are going to really like this. Now, you may hear this referred to as thistle because at one time, thistle seed was put out for finches and buntings. However, it was discovered that the seeds were growing into an invasive plant here in North America. So suppliers have switched to a different plant whose seeds are similar to thistle, but are heat sterilized to limit their growth. Now, peanuts. Blue jays, crows, chickadees, titmice, and woodpeckers enjoy peanuts. You have two options. You can buy them in the shell or shelled. Now, the shelled peanuts typically cost more. If you are getting peanuts in the shell, make sure you are using only raw, unsalted peanuts. So no boiled peanuts, no salted peanuts, just plain peanuts. And then white millet. This is a favorite of ground feeders like doves and sparrows. And then suet. Suet typically comes in blocks of rendered animal fat mixed with nuts, seeds, fruits, and sometimes even mealworms. Woodpeckers love suet, and other birds, like my Carolina wren, will visit suet. Because it is rendered fat, high temperatures, like a Texas summer, will cause the suet to melt. So you'll want to just keep an eye on your suet. If you have pets, mine loves it when mine starts to melt. It's not good for her. So I will swap out to a no melt suet. It doesn't melt, it does what it says, but I do notice that my birds will eat it. They prefer the kind that melts. If you store it in your refrigerator, it makes it very easy to pop out the package as well. And then nectar for your nectar feeders. There is no reason to ever add red color to your hummingbird nectar. While it is true that hummingbirds are attracted to the color red, having a hummingbird feeder with some red coloring on it is more than enough to draw the hummers in. That red dye can cause disease and death. So if you purchase your nectar, make sure you are purchasing dye-free nectar. And if you make your own, never add dyes to it. It is crucial that you keep your feeders clean. So it is recommended that feeders should be cleaned out every 2 weeks. Several diseases like mycoplasmal conjunctivitis, commonly referred to as house finch eye disease, and salmonella can be transferred between birds at feeders. And you can see there that is a finch with finch eye disease. The good news, this finch did recover. He made it to a rehabber and he's doing well. Natural cleaners like vinegar and baking soda are preferred, but you can also clean with a mixture of bleach and water or a biodegradable Castile soap. Always use hot water and rinse thoroughly. It is recommended that feeders be cleaned about every 2 weeks. So wipe it all down, clean it all off, and a hard bristled brush is really good for scrubbing. Nectar can spoil very quickly in hot temperatures, so it is important to empty, clean, and refill hummingbird feeders every few days. In small brushes designed to clean hummingbird feeders, the little part where they're going to be inserting their beak and tongue, they are available to purchase. Now, while we're on the topic of disease and feeders, let's take a moment to look at avian influenza. So its official name is a highly pathogenic avian influenza. It is often referred to as avian influenza, and it is a contagious viral disease of domestic and wild birds. And you've probably heard a lot about this recently. And previously, the virus passed through wild birds without much effect. It was more in the domestic bird range. Now, however, the virus has been detected in wild species such as Canada geese and red-tailed hawks. So this is cause for increased vigilance. But don't let avian influenza stop you from enjoying your backyard birds. Transmission of avian influenza to songbirds and other feeder visitors is low. It doesn't affect all types of birds in the same way. Waterfowl, so these are our ducks, can carry and transmit the virus, and the current strain can sicken and kill them. Raptors are sensitive to the disease, so owls, hawks, they're sensitive to it. And domestic poultry are extremely susceptible to it, and they spread the disease quite easily. So pay attention to local recommendations to take feeders down. If none exist, then it is okay to keep them up. Just ensure that you clean them frequently. And so we have 2 links available for you on here. You can scan or click the link in the chat. The first one is the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's avian influenza page. This will talk to you more about it. And then the second is the Texas Health and Human Services avian influenza page. Now, if you do have backyard poultry, like chickens, exercise caution. Keep songbirds away from them. The Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service of the United States Department of Agriculture encourages these biosecurity measures. So if you do have a backyard flock and you want to feed birds, this is what you want to keep in mind. Make domestic poultry food inaccessible to wild birds, and make domestic poultry water inaccessible to wild birds. Keep domestic poultry indoors or otherwise physically separated from wild birds. So this is why you may hear zoos announcing that their birds are being taken off exhibit when avian influenza has been reported nearby. They don't want them mixing with wild birds that may transmit the disease to them. Change your clothes and wash your hands before and after tending to your poultry. And the USDA APHIS also recommends poultry owners take down wild bird feeders or keep them away from their flocks. So just keep domestic birds and wild birds separate. If you have sick or dead poultry, you'll want to contact the Texas Animal Health Commission. And that number is at that link there, and their calls are taken 24 hours a day. The number is 1-800-550-8242. And if you're out and about and you see 5 or more sick or dead waterfowl, that'd be ducks, geese, coots, or grebes, contact the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department Region 2 Kills and Spills team. And their number is also at that link. It's 512-389-4848, and they also take calls 24 hours a day. So for detailed information, we have those links there. And they also have general information and resources at that Texas Health and Human Services website. So while you may be hearing a lot about avian influenza, don't let it take away from your enjoyment of your wild birds. Just stay alert for anything that may come out saying, hey, now it is time to take them down. Otherwise, just proceed as normal. All right, water. So water is, of course, another crucial part for a bird survival. Not all birds are drawn to feeders, so adding water can draw in even more species. One hot summer's day, a Cooper's hawk visited one of my bird baths. So you can see him there. He is on the bottom right-hand screen. And my brave hummingbirds actually dive bombed him a few times. They thought they could take him on. He ignored them, but it was a really cool experience to watch. And you may be most familiar with the pedestal type of bird bath, but birds typically prefer water sources that are at ground level. Think about the water sources that birds visit in the wild. They're all at ground level. So a puddle, a flooded area in the woods, a creek, a pond, a river, a lake, they're all ground level. So it makes sense that they would prefer water that is at ground level. And the shade is the best location for a bird bath, especially in winter. Put it somewhere away from shrubbery. This is to keep visitors safe from predators who could ambush them when they are vulnerable. And a bird's bath water should be no deeper than 2 inches at its middle. So you can put rocks in the water to let them perch on something if it's a little bit deeper. And birds are attracted by moving water. So you can add a dripper or a sprayer to your bird bath water source. And as a bonus, mosquitoes will not lay eggs in moving water. And hummingbirds especially like to fly through misters or bubblers because they have trouble bathing in water the same way that other birds do. As with feeders, it is important to keep bird baths clean. Replace the water frequently to prevent mosquitoes from hatching, as well as to keep the water sanitary. If you can, keep water out and available when temperatures drop below freezing. You can use an electric heater specifically designed for this purpose, or you can try floating a ping pong ball or a piece of cork in the water, so as it moves around in the wind, it prevents ice from forming. All right, so we have covered food and water. Now let's turn to shelter. There are both natural and human-assisted options for shelter. Let's first look at ways to add shelter to your yard naturally. An appealing bird nursery. Birds need a safe place to build nests, and trees and bushes are great nesting locations. Several birds, especially hummingbirds, use spider webs in their nest. So encourage spiders to live in your yard and leave up old webs where you find them. Someone might use it to build their nest. And don't rake your leaves. Not only do birds use leaves as nesting material, many insects lay eggs in leaves or they live in that leaf litter. When birds are nesting and raising their young, they tend to switch to an insect-rich diet. A yard that is good for birds is also good for bugs. And you can leave out nesting material for birds to use, but do not put synthetic materials like acrylic yarn or human hair. Human hair can ensnare a bird's leg or wing, cutting off their circulation or even severing the limb. Dryer lint does not hold up in rainy weather and should never be set out either. So things like alpaca fur, or if you maybe comb your dog's undercoat out, put that out, but no human hair and nothing synthetic. And snags. Dead trees are useful to birds as living trees are. A snag is a standing dead tree. It is home to insects, and cavity nesters like woodpeckers use it, and it's also a nice perch for all kinds of birds. Now, if you don't have a snag or your dead tree is a hazard to keep, you can instead add a brush pile to your yard. While birds will most likely not nest here, it's a great shelter for birds outside the nesting season. Birds only stay in their nest as long as they have young. So as soon as their young fledge, they are not sleeping in that nest every night. They can also forage for bugs to eat in your brush pile. And some people even refer to brush piles as habitat piles. So brush piles can be created using fallen branches, fallen logs, and cuttings from pruning trees or shrubs. Please note, it is crucial to use brush only from your yard or the yard of close neighbors, with their permission, of course, because transporting brush even short distances opens your trees to the risk of invasive tree pests like emerald ash borer, pecan weevils, fire ants, Mexican soap, fairy borer, and oak wilt. These pests cannot spread far on their own, but the transportation of wood, hay, or nursery floral commodities help them gain footholds. The same holds true for firewood as well. So burn firewood where you buy it. Never assume that wood looks safe. Fungal spores are microscopic and insect eggs are the size of a pinhead. So you can see here is a ad from Texas Parks and Wildlife about burn it where you buy it. And you want to make sure that you are only using natural wood. Materials like pellets can be treated with toxic and carcinogenic chemicals like methyl bromide. So nothing that has been processed and used for something else. So in building your brush pile, you're going to use your largest pieces as your foundation and then loosely pile branches on top. You want to make sure to leave open pockets between layers. Your brush pile should be around 10 to 20 feet long and 4 to 8 feet tall. If you want to create space and hidey holes in the center of the pile, put rocks on the bottom before you add your logs. Now, selecting a brush pile location. Don't put it right next to your house. You do not want your backyard creatures moving from your brush pile to your much warmer home in winter. Ensure that there is good drainage, and getting at least part of your pile in the sun allows animals to bask in the sunshine on cold days. And your brush pile will start to droop as it decays. And this is okay, and it is completely natural. It will be great for your soil and attract the insects that birds like to eat. You can add to your brush pile each time you prune, but stick to things like limbs and trees or shrub cuttings. Save things like leaves and grass clippings for composting. And a decomposing brush pile also helps to sequester carbon in the ground. The addition of organic matter to your soil creates a great habitat for carbon storing microbes, keeping carbon in the soil instead of being set loose in the Earth's atmosphere. Now you can add shelter to your yard through man-made elements as well. And there is more to adding birdhouses or nesting boxes than just putting one up. While there are many options for nest boxes, I'm going to focus more on the do's and don'ts of adding them to your yard. You can use these as a guide for selecting boxes for your own backyard bird paradise. Do not use metal nest boxes. Think about how hot it can get in the summer, and then think of how hot it would be in a metal box. It can get pretty hot. The birds are not going to want to be in there. So instead, get nest boxes made from untreated wood, such as pine, cedar, or cypress. And some backyard bird stores will sell nest boxes that are made from recycled plastic. Now, do be mindful of the entrance size. The right size entrance can attract a particular bird. It can also deter birds. So starlings, which are not native and can sometimes be seen as nuisance or pest, cannot fit into holes smaller than 1 and 9/16 inches, while house sparrows, also invasive and considered a pest by some, cannot fit into a hole smaller than 1¼ inch. So if you want to avoid these invasive birds, select nest boxes with holes they can't fit through. Also, make sure you're not leaving nest boxes vulnerable to predators. If they are mounted on poles, set them away from places where snakes, cats, and raccoons cannot easily access them. You can also put a baffle on the pole to help deter predators from climbing. So this image is one that I took at the Hilton Garden Inn Marsh in Richardson. So you can see it is set away from the brush, and there is a baffle to make climbing the pole difficult. And do not use a nest box with a perch. Birds don't need them, and it helps predators gain access inside. Do make sure to hang your nest box somewhere where your birds can find it. If you're unsure the best place or even the best nest box, you can use the Nest Watch tool, Right Bird, Right House, to learn which birds like what houses, where to hang them, and which direction they should face. Now make sure you don't disturb the babies. You can peek into nest boxes, but don't do so early in the morning or at dusk, during the first few days of incubation, or when babies are about to fledge. Do keep your nest box clean. Once there are no more birds using the nest box, you can remove the nesting material and scrub them out with hot soapy water. It was very important to remember the Migratory Bird Act Treaty of 1918 prohibits the killing, harassment, moving, and taking of the nest, eggs, or young of migratory birds. So even if a less desirable bird takes possession of a nest box and begins to build a nest, you cannot make them move. Speaking of less desirable birds, let's take a moment to talk about dealing with pests. Now, the term backyard pest is up for interpretation. Some may include squirrels in their list of pests, while others do not. So common pests are invasive species of birds, rodents, insects, cats, and squirrels. Deterring them can be difficult, but there are steps you can take to hopefully deter them. European starlings and house sparrows. As I mentioned before, these birds are an introduced species and are sometimes unwelcome at feeders. You can deter them by putting out only the food they tend to dislike, such as safflower, niger, and nectar. And you can help keep starlings away by putting wire cages over the feeder. So this allows smaller birds to access the food, but the starlings will not fit. So you can see in that top left picture, there are some woodpeckers accessing the suet. It's in a cage. They can get in and out, no problem. The starlings cannot. Rodents. Rodents will be attracted to the same foods that birds are. So clean up food debris from beneath feeders and keep your food in cold, dry, airtight containers. This not only helps keep your seed fresh longer, it keeps it safe from rodents and other pests as well. So I use a galvanized metal trash can with a fitted lid. And I also put food in containers that are meant for cereal storage for easy feeder filling. They take up less space in my pantry than an open bag would. Instead of purchasing them brand new, I like to look for them at thrift stores, resales, or garage sales. Insects. I have the most trouble with ants being attracted to my hummingbird feeders. Ant moats can help prevent them from accessing the feeder, and that is what you see there on the bottom left. That is an ant moat. You will need to keep it filled up with fresh water, and it can evaporate quickly, so keep an eye on it. And occasionally you can get insect-infested birdseed. It can come from the store like this. Don't take it as a reflection on your cleanliness. Those eggs or the insects themselves, either as larvae or well-camouflaged adults, can hitch a ride on it. And they can spread quickly, so separate it from your other food as soon as you notice. Cats. Outside cats kill between 2.5 and 4 billion birds every year. So if you have cats, keep them indoors and arrange your feeders in nest boxes in places where cats have no place to hide and ambush birds. And squirrels. I don't mind squirrels. Squirrels are a hot topic in the birding world. Some people hate them, some people love them. I do personally love them. I set out food specifically for them, and this typically keeps them away from my other feeders. I find them funny, and I learned to recognize individuals and give them names. So that top picture there of the squirrel hanging on my shepherd's hook and my feeder, she's hiding from me. If you've ever seen a squirrel on a tree, they tend to run to the other side of the tree, so you cannot see them. And she applied that same logic to that very small pole. And then the other squirrel is an adolescent who spent a morning playing with bird feathers on my patio. It was adorable. I enjoy them. They are determined and they will try very hard to access food. So there are a few things you can do to keep them away. There are squirrel-proof bird feeders, and they can be fairly successful at keeping food away from squirrels. The most effective type typically are ones that close off access to food once a heavier animal, like a squirrel, sits on it. Now, there are some foods that squirrels are said to dislike, such as safflower, which my squirrels don't seem to mind at all, or food with hot pepper added to it. Birds cannot taste capsicum, which is the chemical that makes peppers taste spicy. Mammals, like humans and squirrels, can taste it though. So you can purchase bird seed with that cascan added to it, but some squirrels do not seem to mind spicy food. I have one right now. Her name is Squirrely Jackson, and she seems to enjoy it, so does not deter her. And baffles can deter squirrels from accessing feeders as well, but remember that squirrels are very agile, and mine seem to take them as a challenge rather than a deterrent. These are creatures that live in trees, so jumping from a tree several feet to a feeder is not something that they take a second thought about not doing. They're going to do it to get to the food. Now, we've already discussed keeping your feeders clean and how to deter predators, so let's focus on a few other ways to maintain a safe space for birds. In addition to cleaning feeders, remove soiled food quickly. Your birds are probably going to refuse to eat it anyways if it's not any good. Don't put out more than your birds can eat in 1 to 2 days. And if the food gets wet, remove it quickly. Now, bird strikes. These are responsible for more than 1 billion bird deaths a year. Birds can strike windows because they see the reflection of vegetation and think it is open space. They can be diverted by a lit room at night, and it's not entirely understood why this happens. And they can also assume that their reflection is another bird who they feel they must fight. So to discourage bird strikes, you can put decal stickers, sun catchers, tape, or other objects on your windows. It's important that they are spaced closely together. Now, my favorite decals are made of prismatic vinyl. They cast rainbows into your home when the sun shines through them, but they have a coating that reflects ultraviolet light from the sun. So we barely notice it, but birds can see it more clearly, and they're not going to try and fly through that window. Now at night, turn off all non-essential lights, and if possible, install downward-facing amber lights for those outside lights that you keep on. And if you want to know more about deterring bird strikes, you can visit Lights Out DFW. This is a initiative that takes place every spring and fall, where people in the state of Texas are encouraged to turn out their lights during migration so that birds can get where they're going safely. Strike victims. So if you find a bird suffering from a window strike in your yard or anywhere else, I found one at the library once, approach it from behind and gently cover it with both your hands. Hold it gently but securely and place it in a cardboard box, preferably with tissues or towels to cushion it. Place this box somewhere dark, warm, and quiet. And if it doesn't seem to be recovering and you can't release it, find a wildlife rehabilitator to contact for further instructions. And the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department maintains a list of wildlife rehabilitators that is searchable by county. So you can find the county where you live, click on it, and there'll be a list of rehabbers nearby, what they specialize in. So there's some bird ones that they're not going to want you to bring mammals to, and they can assist you. Now, unfortunately, birds do die. It is part of the cycle of life. You may have birds die from window strikes or disease. Birds who eat other birds do live in your neighborhood and will view your feeder as a nice bird buffet. The Cooper's hawk I showed you a few slides back loves to grab a few white-winged doves every few weeks from my feeder. He's a messy eater. He doesn't want to eat the feathers, so he rips them all out, eats the bird, leaves behind the wings for me to race my dog to in order to clean up. So if you find a deceased bird or the remains of one in your yard, pick it up while wearing gloves, put it in a plastic bag, put that bag into another bag, and dispose of it in the trash. Then wash your hands really well with hot water and soap. Also be mindful of any holiday decorations you've put up outdoors. Net lighting and fake spider webs can be fatal if a bird gets stuck in them. And this is an example here of an owl that caught in some fake spider webs at Halloween. Also, make sure to check your garlands, wreaths, and lights frequently to make sure that there are no animals ensnared in them or nesting in them. I'm sure you've seen images online of a bird making a nest in someone's wreath on their front door. They will do that, so you don't want to take it down if it is a active nest. All right, so enjoying your birds. I spent hours watching my backyard wildlife. I keep a pair of binoculars and camera close at hand, as well as a few bird guides. Now, field guides are an individual preference. It's best to explore different books to see which one works best for your needs. Now, one of my favorite field guides is Birds of Texas Field Guide by Stan Teklia, and that is the second book on the screen grab of our catalog. So during migration seasons, though, you might see unfamiliar visitors from other parts of the country or even other countries. White-crowned sparrows breed in the Arctic Circle in Canada, but they'll migrate to North Texas in the winter. For this reason, it's a good idea to have a field guide to North American birds as well. And my favorite is the Peterson Field Guide to Birds. And you can use our library catalog to find different bird guides to explore and see what you like best. And the reason that Birds of Texas Field Guide is one of my favorites is it is organized by bird color. So if you see a green bird, you can just flip to the section on green birds. So it's a good way to quickly identify them. It is always a good idea to become familiar with the birds in your neighborhood. So 15 to 20 bird species will make up 99% of your neighborhood bird sightings. Consider these your baseline birds. The more you become familiar with these birds, the easier it will be to recognize them by sight and sound. And that way, when you see something unusual, you're going to pick up on it quickly, which is how I saw that I had a Nashville warbler a few months back. I was like, that does not look like any of my normal birds. And sure enough, it was not. Sometimes, though, referring to a field guide while birding is difficult. So the Merlin Bird ID app was created by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology to help birders answer the question, what's that bird? It's free to download and is available for both Apple and Android devices. And it has the option to upload a photo of that mystery bird that you just saw, and it will identify it for you. Sound ID will also identify birds for you by their sound, and this is one of my favorite features. So you can allow the app to run when you hear a bird song, and it's going to let you know who is singing. This is how I found out that every summer, a common nighthawk hangs out in my neighborhood. Now, birds will need to be close by or very loud, like a crow or a blue jay, to be picked up by the app. And ambient noise like traffic or this time of year, cicadas, can make it difficult to pick up on a bird's song. It can also be tricked by a mockingbird. So if you suddenly find that you have a lot of birds you don't usually have in your yard, take a look around and see if a mockingbird is nearby. They're usually on the highest point. Mine likes to hang out on a telephone pole, and they could be the culprit. And Merlin Bird ID will maintain a life list of all the birds you have identified with it, and all your IDs will be recorded as a checklist in eBird if you use that app. Now, it does have its limits, so it's best to use it along with those bird field guides. You can also crowdsource an ID by uploading your pictures to the iNaturalist app. Now, I like to keep a notebook as well. This is where I list the birds that I see visit my yard each day. Now, some of my favorite birds never set wing in my yard, but I do hear them overhead. In August, I hear the Mississippi kites calling overhead as they prepare to migrate south to South America. And all summer, I enjoy watching chimney swift chase bugs in the evening. So keeping track the first time I hear them gives me something to look forward to through the dark days of winter. Alternatively, recording the first time I see my snowbirds, such as the white-throated sparrows or dark-eyed juncos each year, helps me look forward to seeing them as the days grow shorter. Now, if you would like to go a step further with your bird watching, there are 3 citizen science opportunities from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology that you can participate in. Now, citizen science is a collaboration between scientists and people who are curious or concerned about the world around them and are motivated to make a difference. eBird is an app whose goal is to gather information about birds in the form of checklists of bird species. They archive them and make it freely available to share to power data-driven approaches to science, conservation, and education. And we will have a virtual program about this in the fall. We don't have one this summer, but we'll have one in the fall. Nest Watch is a project where citizen scientists monitor bird nests and record data on species, eggs, and young to help scientists understand how climate change, urbanization, and land use affects breeding birds. You can learn more about this project at the Nest Watch website, which has already been shared with you for the Right Bird, Right Nest database. And then Project Feeder Watch is a project where citizen scientists count birds who visit their feeders from November to April to help scientists monitor changes in the abundance and distribution of birds. Please note that this one has an $18 annual participation fee, as the project is supported almost entirely by its participants. Now, you do receive a poster of common birds who visit the feeders when you join. Library resources. So in addition to bird guides in our collection, PPL also have books about feeding birds and planting bird-friendly plants. A search for bird feeding narrowed down to the adult nonfiction, which you can do on that left-hand side of our catalog, should get you a good start in browsing our online catalog. Some titles include Feed the Birds, Attract and Identify 196 Common North American Birds by Chris Early. I especially like this one because it's organized by bird. So if you see a new visitor to your yard, you can look them up and see what they eat. By putting out their favorite foods, hopefully you can encourage them to stick around. Another good one is 100 Plants to Feed the Birds, Turn Your Home Garden into a Healthy Bird Habitat by Laura Erickson. If you use books like this one, though, please keep in mind they typically are not local. So you will want to make sure that the plants you are interested in growing actually grow in North Texas. And magazines. For those card holders with digital access, you can access bird magazines through Libby and Press Reader. The Libby app gives you access to Bird in Bloom magazine, Audubon magazine, and Bird Watching, which is a British publication. And Press Reader will give you access to Birdwatch, which is another British publication. Now, British publications will not have the same birds featured that would be in a North American publication, but bird watching techniques and suggestions will still be relevant to you. And it is fun to read about birds no matter the location they call home. Through the National Wildlife Federation, you can get your yard certified as a wildlife habitat if your yard provides a minimum of 3 natural sources of food. Your yard has at least 2 places for wildlife to find shelter from weather or predators. Your yard has at least 2 places for wildlife to engage in courtship behavior, mate, and then bear and raise young, and employ at least 2 sustainable practices from 4 categories: soil and water conservation, controlling non-native species, reducing pollution, and reduce, reuse, and recycle. So you can find out more about this on the National Wildlife Federation's website. There is a registration fee for business or residential certification, which is just $20, and all schools are free. If anyone has any questions or needs assistance, you can contact Andrea Chicks, who is our Senior Water Conservation Coordinator for the City of Plano. And I can quickly drop that email address into the chat. I did forget to share it. I apologize. She can answer your questions and they can help you register. All right, so what is next? Enjoy your birds. The more I watch my birds, the more I get to know them as individuals. I give my frequent visitors names, and my cardinals Pete and Lady have raised several broods of babies, and watching them bring fledglings to my feeder for the first time is the highlight of spring for me. You can see 2 of their babies here. Their personalities, you really get to know them as you watch them. Lady, the female cardinal, is ready for her babies to fledge and move on, and their father, Pete, likes to continue to feed them as long as possible. If you would like to learn more about citizen science, we do have two programs this summer. On July 28th at 6:30, we have our Backyard Bugs virtual program. And then on August 25th, we have our iNaturalist Be a Citizen Science virtual program. You can watch older editions of our eBird program, or you can download the app and start to explore. You can watch those older versions of the programs that have been recorded on our library YouTube page. And in the Texas Ornithological Society, the Dogwood Canyon Audubon Center, which is in Cedar Hill, or the Trinity River Audubon Center in Dallas, you can just do a search for them, and they will frequently host birding workshops. So if you want to connect with other birders, that would be a good option for you. Great, well, that is all that we have for you today. I want to thank you all for coming. We appreciate you being here. Be sure to stay up to date with Plano Public Library by following our Facebook page and our Instagram page. There you can see upcoming programs, explore library services, and you can find recordings of past programs on our YouTube channel. If you think of a question later, please utilize our Ask a Librarian page. Once it comes through, they're going to know to connect me with the question, and I'll get back to you. If you have questions now, feel free to drop them into the chat. Otherwise, that is all that we have for you today. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next time.